Good morning, everyone. So transitioning now to our panel, I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you, Mortada. Thank you, Matt, for thinking of us. When they initially talked to me about talking about synergies between France, Texas, and Quebec, I thought it was really an amazing topic because, as you hear from the accent, born and raised in France, been in Texas for 20 years and now working for Quebec, I just thought, what a great way to showcase everyone's best practices in transportation. Today we're talking a little bit more precisely about synergies that we see in ground and greening technologies between Europe, Quebec, and Texas. And it's my privilege to introduce our panel. And so if you indulge me, I will just quickly present them one at a time. Guillaume Brossard, at my left, is the Vice President of Commercial for Polara Energy, which is a Quebec company. Guillaume has over 20 years of experience in commercialization and the development of major infrastructure projects across the energy, marine, and real estate sectors, as well as commercial law. Polara Energy is a leader in electric vehicle fleet infrastructure engineering and software. It provides turnkey, high-performance, and modular charging solutions for commercial fleets across North America, managing projects from design to daily operation. Buzz Smith, on his left, is the executive director of the Texas EV Alliance. After a career of 10 years in oil and gas, Buzz emerged as a Texas leading EV salesperson and pioneered Electric Avenue, Texas' first EV showroom. He is now focusing on EV advocacy at the Texas EV Alliance, which is an organization that gathers EV owners, manufacturers, charging companies, transportation industry members, and community advocates to promote policies that increase access to electricity vehicles and charging stations in Texas, leading to electric vehicle-based economic growth. And on his left, we have Billy Fields, who is a professor of political science at Texas State University. His research has focused on understanding the key elements of resilient communities. He's the lead author of the Adaptation, Urbanism, and Resilient Communities, and co-editor of Texas Beyond Oil. He directs the International Sustainable Transportation Engagement Program, an annual study abroad program in the Netherlands, exploring best practices in active transportation. He has now, and we're very lucky about this, developed his interest in microeconomic development around public transportation hubs in Montreal. So I will now move on to asking them some questions. They've been prepared. Buzz, I will start with you. When we talk about electrification in Texas, there's always some concern about grid reliability. Can you walk us through how the grid works in Texas and the impact and possibilities from electric vehicles?
Sure. Y'all can't hear me, right? Okay, and my voice carries. Texas is not like the rest of the United States. Austin is not like the rest of Texas. For those that are not from here, you need to be aware of that, especially as you're making those business connections. Business connections are really just sales calls. And in Sales 101, you're taught to speak the other person's language. And I'm not talking about English here. I'm talking about, and I've heard it over and over today, and this is not a bad thing. I consider myself an environmentalist. Stop saying green in Texas, please, if you want to be successful. Now, the grid here, a brilliant idea that, and Texas has its own grid separate from the rest of the United States, which is odd. There's a lot of things odd in Texas. But a lot of us have the ability to choose our electric retailer. And the electric industry has been broken into three segments. There's power generation, power transmission, and then retailing to the end users. So a lot of us get to pick our own retailer. Now, because of that competition drove prices down. And so Texas has had the enviable position of very low price electricity, low price gasoline compared to the rest of the United States. Now, the downside of that is when you're competing on price primarily, you tend to cut corners. And you may have heard of the ice storm Uri that happened a few years ago. More than 100 Texans died during that. And it was originally blamed on renewable energy, but what it turned out to be was the gas power plants didn't winterize. And failing to winterize, moisture got into the pipelines, and it just shut everything down. And it was actually renewable energy that saved us. By the way, in case you don't know this, everybody thinks California is the renewable energy center of the United States. Wind energy's #1 is Texas. Solar energy, #1 is Texas. Utility scale battery energy storage is Texas. So we are not big oil Texas anymore, not oil and gas Texas anymore. We are big energy Texas. Now, we have to increase our energy generation within the next 6 years by 86%. That's like the grid we've taken 130 years to build has to almost double in size in a short period of time. Data centers and AI centers, Texas is becoming #1 in that in the United States. Those are very power-hungry industries. And so you may have gone to a party on a Friday night where somebody said BYOB, and you knew that meant bring your own bottle. Well, in Texas, there's a new acronym, BYOG, bring your own generation. So if you're going to establish a large power-hungry company here, like a data center, for instance, we're encouraging those companies to plan their own energy generation. So that's one of the things that's different about Texas. Now, I'm in electric vehicles, as Eglantine mentioned earlier. My first 10 years of my career was oil and gas. I grew up in Houston. No matter what you did in Houston, you worked in the oil and gas industry. If you were a waiter in a restaurant, you worked in oil and gas because that's what paid your bills. It's those oil men going out for the 3-martini lunch, you know. It's the big company get-togethers. So this state was really focused on oil and gas, and the collapse of the price of oil in the 80s drove a lot of people out of that industry, including myself. Now, EVs, everybody automatically asks, well, aren't they going to strain the grid? I mean, you're pulling even more electricity out. And here's the thing. There's a thing called V2X, vehicle to whatever. And that could be vehicle to grid, vehicle to your home, vehicle to load, and soon vehicle to business. That is going to stabilize the grid, making it a great place to do business, because as of this morning, there are 475,420 electric vehicles registered in the state of Texas. That is growing at the rate where it doubles about every 2 years right now, and that's after the slowdown. So Texas is going to be a great place for energy reliability in the very near future, and electric vehicles are going to have a lot to do with that.
Thank you, Buzz. Guillaume, now a question for you. Quebec has been an early adopter of electric solutions for both private and public transportation. Can you walk us through some of the best practices in fleet electrification in Quebec that you've noticed?
Yeah, sure. With pleasure. Thank you for having me over here. I appreciate the invitation. And as Buzz mentioned, so the fact that EVs, I mean, are we hear a lot of things over the past year, 2 years. Let's say it's all like Stellantis is rethinking the way they're going to do EV. Same thing for Ford. But when you take a step back and you see the overall market, like China is investing a lot and making EVs cheap. And we see over here more and more ROI that are very positive in terms of switching from diesel to EVs in commercial fleets. More specifically in light-duty trucks, urban deliveries, so type A bus for transits, let's say. So you're going to see this more and more. And as Buzz mentioned, I'm surprised it's going to be doubled in 2 years if the pace goes forward. Sorry, in 2 years, it's huge. So how can you implement this correctly as a fleet or a commercial operator? And Grid mentioned it. Buzz mentioned correctly. The grid is a key, and the way to think about the implementation of EVs is not the same way you're going to buy a diesel truck or a diesel van. You buy it, you go to the gas station, you fill it, and there you go. When you buy EVs or you want to integrate EVs, I would say there's 4 things that I think you have to go through, and it's just a different mindset. It's not more complicated and stuff. It's just a way of operating your system correctly. So first, you're going to plan ahead. You're going to plan in terms of, okay, is the grid, what's the power that I need on the grid to be able to implement a few EVs into my fleet? And I would not suggest to go like full steam ahead with 100% of your fleet switch to EV. That's not the road to success. I would say maybe starts with 5, 6. Do the drill, embrace it, and you're gonna let's say slowly but surely integrate more and more over the upcoming 5 to 10 years. That's the time span I would suggest you to go. So plan with your grid, with the utility, engage with it, and understand what's the type of infrastructures do I need to implement, like chargers. So to put chargers in, to have the utility confirmation that there's capacity on the grid and what's to be installed, it could take between 8 to 12 months. So if you buy your EV and then you call the utility, you might wait 10, 12 months before having the power onto your site or your depot. So the next one, I would say so do this in parallel. Start by planning correctly, understanding your fleet, your routes, which ones are electrified, electrified, or the easiest one to electrify, and then start talking with your dealership. What type of EV can I bring into my fleet? Is it an e-transit? Is it a small van, a light-duty truck, a Type A bus or van? And then engage with the utility at the same time. Then everything will come along in about 8 to 12 months. You're going to deliver. You're going to receive your EV. At the same time, you're going to have your chargers light up and be able to charge your batteries. The last thing I would suggest. Two things that are important. One is understanding the way your electricity bill works, because, like Buzz said, I mean it's low in terms of cost, in terms of fuel compared to diesel. It's about more than 50% reduction in terms of energy cost. But you can even do better by optimizing the way you charge. And V2G is one, but also just limit your demand charge on the grid. So the demand charge is the amount of energy you pull at once at the same time over the grid. There's a tariff for this, and this is actually quite expensive. So you reduce this and try to understand how your energy consumption is on the grid. And people like us, I mean, that's what we do for life. We do install, but we also do manage energy consumption and help you reduce your costs. And you can have an ROI of 3 to 5 years easily. You're using a electric vehicle instead of a diesel one. And lastly, train your drivers, and it's a change in the matters. It's a change in the way to operate your fleet. But it's and I was in Schaumburg near Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and we commissioned a transit project over there. And I was asking one driver, hey, like, do you like it? What's your feeling about driving an EV bus? And he told me, say the first, and it was an experienced driver. So, I mean, he has a few years behind the belt, and he told me actually that he was really pushing back against the EV implementation. And he said, I don't want any EVs. Like this was his mindset first, and then he tried, and after a month said, I'm not leaving that. I said, this is my bus. I want to drive it every day, and nobody is going to touch it because it's quiet. It's easy to drive. It's fun to drive because you have power, and so it's a different change. So take the time to train correctly your drivers, your people, to embrace it, and it's going to be a very positive success. I'm convinced.
Thank you, Guillaume. So, Billy, you are eyes on Europe today, and I know Buzz does not like the word greening, but I know it's your expertise, so I'm still going to ask. Can you share some best practices you've noticed in greening from the cities you've visited in Europe?
Yeah, one of the things, I will use the word green, one of the things that I've really seen is the connection between public transit and then actual green on the streets. So I'm creating a database with a co-author of 96,000 stations around the world, rail stations around the world. And what we have found is that particularly Western Europe is the leader in creating connected green locations. And those locations do multiple things. They first provide connections into neighborhoods themselves with green streets. And so that green limits your sort of exposure to heat and to more intense rainfall. But those neighborhoods also link into a broader commercial system where you have transit-oriented developments that link multiple cities together. So you can do business fast, you can do business in multiple cities all within a day and then come back, and then you're linked back into your neighborhoods as well. And then Montreal as well is one of the leaders in North America that we found as well with the same type of operations.
Thank you, Billy. My next question will move us towards microeconomic developments. This question is addressed to all of you. And in your eyes, what are best practices in mobility which encourage macroeconomic developments around public transportation hubs and EV charging station, which I might stay with you, Billy, because you just started to mention that topic. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about more practically how it looks like?
Yeah, and so I lead students, I'm at Texas State, and then we lead students to the Netherlands and London every summer. And it's been great. I've done it for 10 years, and to see sort of eyes open, and then we come back to Texas, and you see opportunities for some of the things that work well in Europe, and then some of the things that you have to do differently. But what we found is really the potential of linking locations and place. Building stronger and more resilient places is not only good for your neighborhoods, but it's also good for business in terms of transit-oriented development. So I move back and forth between London and Amsterdam. We start the program in London. We have our students, and we visit multiple different locations throughout London. And then within a few hours, we're in Amsterdam in another place. And the students are getting this sort of perspective on how that works. Well, the same thing operates from a business perspective as well, because you can move from markets in multiple different countries very fast. And that access and speed is really a powerful thing with these sort of transit-oriented development hubs. And we don't fly because it takes so much longer to fly than to just have that access via these trains and in these locations.
Guillaume, do you want to add something maybe on the charging stations or similar?
Yeah, sure. So, and I'm going to piggyback actually on what Buzz was explaining on the V2G and V2B, because in my opinion, it's the grid constraint is, yes, it's something, but also it can create value in a way with the EV implementation on a lot, on a depot. So I'll give you a few examples. So you have a few EVs, you come back after a day, they are maybe it's 4 p.m., 5 p.m., they're 45% left battery charge in it, you plug it. Instead of, in between 4 and 7 p.m., usually it's a time where tariffs are expensive from the grid, and you don't want to draw more power. So what you can do, and it's projects that we are developing on our side. We are doing one, actually 2 in California. We have 1 in Quebec, 1 in BC, British Columbia. So you want to give back actually either to the building, to your facility, or directly to the grid. So that what that means? That means it creates value for the operator, which actually is able to charge his batteries on the vehicles when it's low tariff, let's say at night, overnight, and then can send it back and get paid for it during the peak hours, either the morning or in the afternoon, late night. So this is actually something that enables the implementation of EV to be actually much more cost effective. And there's a few other examples, like in Vermont, where they actually did this with battery storage, Tesla battery storage in houses to relieve the grid from actually supplying these houses on peak events. It's the same thing with EV. We do participate in Quebec and in BC, and we're in discussion with a few utilities over here in the United States to do demand response program. So instead of putting back energy on the grid, you just stop consuming energy during peak hours. And then the utility actually, the electron or the production of that electron or the transmission or distribution of that electron is very costly on very peak demand. So instead of buying more, they're going to ask their ratepayers to consume less, and then they're going to incentivize this, and that creates value for the operators of EVs, of EV fleets. So these are 2 examples that I can rely on this and piggyback on what Buzz was explaining.
Buzz, how do you feel about Texas on this?
Well, actually, the Consumer Reports, using their annual automotive survey information, did some background on this, and the truck driver story that came up early was great, and it kind of gives you a glimpse of this. If you know nothing about electric vehicles in Texas or in the United States, 40% of us say, I'll never own one of those things. If you see one in your neighborhood, it drops to 22%. Friend gets one, 17%. You ride in one a few times, 10%. You drive one a few times, and the people who say they'll never own one drops to 4%. So it went from 40% to 4%, and that's experience. So what I would love to see, and this is just self-serving, is much more public transportation that's done with electricity, much more trucking that's done with electricity, because those people that are driving those trucks and driving those buses get that experience. And on the truck driver's story earlier, same thing happened at PepsiCo. They bought some Tesla semis, and the drivers didn't want to have anything to do with them. After a short period of time, they would actually fight over who got to drive the electric truck that day. And the same thing happens in the world. Unfortunately, EVs have become politicized here in the United States, and the rest of the world is starting to walk away from us, and we need to wake up to this. But the best way to do that is personal exposure to EVs, and public transportation and shipping is going to have a lot to do with that. Now, earlier we heard from educators who are talking about the challenges for businesses locating good candidates for positions and then keeping them. Well, a great fringe benefit that companies can offer to their employees is free charging at work. But let's make that a two-way street. Let's not just put in dumb one-way chargers. Let's put in bidirectional chargers so that when electricity that normally is 14 cents per kilowatt hour in Texas goes to $9 a kilowatt hour, which it does in times of peak demand when the grid's under incredible strain, you can either save yourself a lot of money by taking your business off the grid and using the electricity that's in your employees' cars to run the building, and then give them free electricity the rest of the time. There are things that people aren't thinking about yet because they just don't have the experience with EVs, but it is going to change things to the point where our depreciating asset today, our automobile, is actually going to bring money into our families, into our businesses.
So we'll tackle our last question, which is a slight diversion from our discussion, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's so important. Texas is very proud of its biking trail, and we have all seen them. They're really large, very Texas size. But Europe has been an early leader in bike-friendly layouts for biking lanes and for biking trails. And Quebec has developed really renowned technologies in e-bike rental, and actually you have a full system here in Austin, so if you haven't rented a bike, you should check it out. Just doing a little plug here. And so I just wanted to ask each one of you if you can share some best practices you've noticed on biking infrastructure, including e-biking infrastructure or biking trails. And I will start with you, Billy, for like the Europe side.
Sure. This is where I buy into selling things in a different way. I used to be the research director for Rails to Trails Conservancy, and we looked at building trails all around the United States. And one of the things we found was that economic development was the thing that sold these projects. People like riding their bikes, they like going outside, but really focusing on trails as a source of economic development. So we focused on this idea called trail-oriented development, where trails become a center for neighborhoods and building stronger and more livable neighborhoods. And we've done research around Texas, and Texas has all sorts of great examples of that. The Katy Trail in Dallas, the whole kind of Bayou network in Houston. There are lots of great trails here in Austin as well. And then San Antonio has some great examples. And what we found is really that this idea was really powerful. And then instead of focusing on bicycling just as, you know, recreation and lycra, selling it as something that connected to people's neighborhoods, and then really that became a way to rethink biking. And then I know we'll talk about e-biking as well, but that's another really important way to extend the reach of bicycling so that you're not hot and you can use bikes in a different way.
Thanks, Billy. The heat question is always very important. Buzz, a few words. You each have 1 minute because I was told this is it.
I rode a Trek bicycle for 35 years for physical fitness. My wife got an electric bicycle. Within a month, I got one. I haven't touched my Trek since then. I'm still getting great exercise because you can turn up or turn down the battery assist, but this is going to be a great thing. If you haven't gone and ridden an e-bike, give it a try. But think about the ability to commute and not show up to work covered in sweat. Not everybody has 4 seasons, which is what I was laughing about Quebec, but this is amazing. And in our neighborhood, the Fort Worth trail system has been routed through our neighborhood now, so we have access to it, 2 blocks from my house. And I see families going out for 4 or 5 mile walks in the evenings as families with their children. So this is something that builds communities, and it gives us the opportunity to not sit there in a car alone next to somebody else in their car alone, stuck behind 1,000 more people in their cars alone. We can get out there on the trails, enjoy them. There are parts of Fort Worth you don't even know you're in a city anymore. They're in such dense woods as these trails go along. Great way to live.
Thank you, Buzz.
Actually, yes, I'll piggyback on what you're saying. It's personally, I'm a cyclist, so and I commute when the weather is actually favorable to it in Montreal. So to work by bike, and I chose actually where I was going to live in Montreal according to the bike path that are accessible to downtown Montreal. So and by doing this so I combine, that's really personal. I combine my training, let's say, or my exercise that I do by commuting, instead of being in a car and transporting myself in a car or in a subway. Well, I do enjoy my bike path and my cycling abilities to be able to go from to work and back home afterwards. So it's true. And in Montreal, what I experience is the places, some neighbors are really well connected, and you see more and more neighbors like that built and get more and more trendy. Actually, the place I live was Verdun, and it was called, the main street of Verdun was called the coolest street in the world. And it's actually around it, but there's a lot of bike paths, a lot of e-bikes. And just this morning, I came in from my hotel, which is about 10-15 minutes from here, in an electric scooter, just to give you an example. So I mean, it's when you embrace it, and then you make it part of your life, and it's very fun.
Guillaume, Buzz, Billy, thank you for joining me today, and we'll leave you on to the next panel.